Good morning, gearheads. Welcome to Speed City F1 on Sirius XM. It's John Massagill. I am sitting in a very early morning studio in Austin, Texas, and I'm joined by my cohorts, Jonathan Green and Les Kaiser over Zoom. Good morning, gentlemen. How are you?
Good morning. It's a little bit, oh my God, it's early, as Robin Williams once said.
Yeah, it's early. It's early. I think I shot the rooster though.
Well, you remember in the old days when you had to go and set a clock, and nowadays your clock does it for you on your phone. I don't think the millennials and teenagers have to do that. They don't even know what we're talking about. We don't have to worry about any of them listening, though. I have a house full of them. My daughter had a bunch of teenagers over, and they stayed over, and they're all snoozing away till probably many, many hours from now. But I'm excited, man. We have a new circuit in Formula One at Imola. We have the Formula One Emilia Romagna Grand Prix that we are about to see in about an hour. And Jonathan, you have been there many times and walked out on your Nikes, haven't you?
I have actually, yes. We did Superbikes there, World Superbikes there a lot. And of course, Imola is in the heart of racing country. If you consider that Maranello is down the road, Ducati is down the road, Valentino Rossi lives down the road. But no, I mean, it's where Lamborghini are made, it's where Ducatis are made, it's where Ferraris are made. It is absolutely the heartbed of racing in Italy. And it's set in the most beautiful historic city of Imola. Originally a gladiator site, actually, funnily enough, where the circuit is. So it gives you the sense of how old it is.
Competition goes back millennia.
Yeah, they've been racing around Imola for a long time.
So did was it Mercury that led the field at that time?
Charlton Heston was, I think, world champion for many years before Fangio came along.
Well, tell us about walking this thing and about the changes that have been made over the years, because it is a little different than it once was.
Yeah, the thing about it is it's a very, like I said, it's built in a city. So you are literally walking distance from the main city. You can walk from your hotel to Imola. And once they fire up the engines and you're in Imola, you're going to hear them for miles to come. I used to stay about 15 miles away and you could still hear the engines roar in the morning. So it's a very different place. And you'll see, as you see you'll see the houses in the distance. But that has also, over the years, forced Imola into a few changes. As we know, it's most famous for 1994, May 1st, when sadly Ayrton Senna lost his life during the race at Imola. And that led to a huge change. First of all, they didn't go back there for several years. But it was deemed unsafe for Formula One because they couldn't move Tamburello, which is the corner, the first corner, the very fast first corner that Senna went off on. And the reason they couldn't change anything was there's a river actually behind there. So they couldn't actually move the gravel trap any further or change the course. So they rethought it and they came up with effectively a chicane at Tamburello. And so now the opening of the course is a long run to Tamburello into the chicane, left, right, to another straight, and then into the Villeneuve chicane. Before it then starts to climb uphill. So it's very narrow, it's very tight, it's very technical, it's full of some great fast Piratella, Acqua Minerale corners. And all in all, you've got to have you've got to have your wits about you. You saw with the track limits in qualifying, it could easily go wrong. But it's a fascinating place. And I actually think Lewis Hamilton was quoted as saying it's going to be a boring race. And I kind of know what he means, because what he's saying is there isn't a lot of places to overtake. And he's right, but I think strategy and traffic and also the one DRS zone that there is from Ravazza 2 at the end of the track all the way to Tamburello, the first corner, with no chicane, because there used to be a chicane at the end of the circuit, but they took that out. So I actually think it's going to be an interesting circuit, and it will have, therefore, because they haven't raced there, a little few imponderables, and with Bottas on pole, it just adds a little spice to it. So yeah,
I like that, imponderables. I'm going to steal that. You know, we said this before, though, that this could be a boring race. There's not going to be any passing, and we've had some pretty good racing this year. And so we will see if that changes. What about you, Les? What are you excited about for Imola here?
uh, Actually, quite the entire thing. A new track that we have essentially no experience on. Seeing that, yeah, it might turn out to be boring. It To me, we're going to see if Mercedes knocks off one more world championship today. Odds are they will, which also sets a record for championships, manufacturers' championships, I believe. So it should be interesting in that part. Gosh, I got to go back. It's almost my mantra this season. We've got to some interesting places. The race to the first turn is going to be interesting again.
Yeah, well, let me just run down the qualifying results for everybody that is listening on the radio. So Valtteri Bottas on pole, which we'll talk a lot about, and how that could change up the excitement of a race, not having Lewis Hamilton on pole. But Lewis Hamilton in second, Max Verstappen third, Pierre Gasly, Daniel Ricciardo, Alexander Albon, Charles Leclerc down in seventh, Daniel Kvyat, Lando Norris, Carlos Sainz rounds out the top 10. Sergio Perez, Esteban Ocon, George Russell, Sebastian Vettel, Lance Stroll, Roman Grosjean, Kevin Magnussen, and then Kimi Räikkönen, Nicholas Latifi, and Antonio Giovinazzi, and wraps out the qualifying. But this is going to be, there's lots of stories starting with the front because we don't have Lewis Hamilton, but we're going to go into all the in-depth on qualifying here in a minute. But Jonathan, I want to ask you about AlphaTauri. You reminded me before we went on air, you wanted to talk about them.
Yeah, and the reason being that I kind of agree with a point that was made in the Checkered Flag podcast, which is we want to know what Red Bull are going to do next year, and AlphaTauri's fate, as it were, is in line. Honda have decided they're pulling out, and we still don't know what the driver lineup, but we do know is that Gasly is going to be leading the AlphaTauri team. And when Helmut Marko was asked about that, they said they needed a good team leader at AlphaTauri. With the presumption then, as the reporter quite rightly put it, would that mean that you're bringing in a young driver from the Red Bull camp? Now, we've been talking about Callum Ilott and Mick Schumacher in the Ferrari tent. But we haven't talked too much about the Red Bull juniors. But the truth is, it springs to mind that Yuki Tsunoda, a guy I spent 6 weeks with last winter doing the Toyota Racing Series, is both a Red Bull junior and a Honda junior. And I wonder if this is the play to keep Honda on board, which is, as Sato, as we know, is a Honda driver through and through and has been the superstar for Japanese racing over the last 25 years. Who's next? And the truth is Yuki Tsunoda is next. And I think he was third in Formula 2. He's got the pedigree. He's a good kid. He's fast. And I think that Red Bull could be hedging their bets on keeping Honda engines by putting the Honda junior driver in their junior team. That's my take for the day.
That is interesting to try to keep Honda. Is that just you speculating? Have you heard rumors?
That's me speculating, yeah. But I had it backed up effectively by the conversation in the Checkered Flag that said that Helmut Marko pretty much confirmed that was the idea, that to keep Gas, instead of moving Gasly up to replace Albon and effectively playing musical chairs again, they were going to basically make him the team leader for AlphaTauri, which he's more than capable of doing, even though he's young. And that means that there still is room for Albon to get flicked, as it were, and bring someone like a Perez or Hülkenberg in if they so choose. But I don't see it personally. I think Albon's done a good job. Red Bull, they seem to switch drivers with the win. So we'll see.
Yeah. Yeah, that is interesting to see. I mean, I love your theory about Honda, but I mean, what's happening right now with all the drivers? That's going to be. I mean, because so right now, as of yesterday, Hamilton hadn't signed, which they said was not going to be done until after he secured the championship, I believe, obviously. But obviously they'll resign.
I think Hamilton's waiting to find out what Toto does, because Toto Wolff may not be at Mercedes either.
Yeah, that's true.
And I think they are ham and bud. I think they're good friends, and I think Hamilton trusts him, and they trust each other, and they've been a good combination, a la Ross Brawn and Michael Schumacher over the years. And I think that Hamilton's relationship with a new Mercedes boss, whoever he is, could be, interesting.
That's an excellent call. I really kind of thought he was just playing out for some drama effect. But yeah, Toto actually is a very good call, and that's a powerful play in Hamilton's thought process. I've just got to imagine that's weighing heavy in it.
Well, also, there's a lot of talk at the moment about salary caps. And I think as a driver like Lewis Hamilton or Charles Leclerc or Vettel, you'd be wondering how that comes into play, because Hamilton clearly can ask money wise for whatever he likes. And, given the realms of rarefied air he's in compared to NBA stars and NFL stars, there's no, and he's risking his life just like an NFL star is. I think, danger money, so to speak. It's a really touchy subject, caps on drivers in Formula One, because sometimes you could argue, you've got a budget of 500 million. How much is the driver, an impact in that 500 million spend?
Yeah,
One of the
good
things
point.
that was brought up in one of the articles I read some time back is how they potentially could get around such a budget for the driver. Well, that Hamilton becomes a brand ambassador, for instance, for Mercedes-Benz, and
Huh.
there the streetcar that is,
Gets two
and
salaries.
so there they kind of circumvent a little bit that he has a salary from the streetcar family and he has a salary from the F1 team. And so there were some concerns over circumventing in that manner. In some ways, I had rather see them, FIA that is, and F1, to set a budget for the vehicle itself and let the salaries go where they may.
Well, that is actually, in principle, what they've decided. This salary cap thing has only just come up. In other words, your 145 million that you're going to spend on the does not include driver salaries.
And that's exactly how it should be, in my thoughts. That keeps the equipment there, and the rest falls to the driver's skill.
And like you say, commercial deals that really don't affect the ability for the competitiveness of Formula One. In other words, if you're Ferrari and you want to spend 100 million on the driver that you want, then so be it. Alonso, what's his caveat? What is he worth? For a team.
So effectively, what you just said is that in Formula One, the machinery makes more difference than the driver. Because if you're saying the competitiveness is not affected by driver salary, I mean, that's an age-old argument, but the competitiveness obviously is still affected by drivers and who you get.
And also, I don't want to lose the battle, if you will, for who is worth their salt. In other words, you've got Alonso sitting on the sidelines. Last year, you had Ocon, and their market value should be how able they are to get the car performing. I mean, that's why the best deal in Formula One is Valtteri Bottas, because he proved it yesterday. He can, on his day, be faster than Lewis Hamilton, and that you can't ask for more. You cannot ask for more than being faster on a day than one of the greatest drivers of all time. So, how much do they pay Lewis versus what they pay Valtteri? I bet it's a huge difference.
Yeah, imagine that. Well, I want to go through and talk about the silly season, talk about the seats that are available still, because we filled a few of them. But I think I want to go ahead and take a quick break now before we do that and get that out of the way, because there's a bunch to talk about. You're listening to Speed City F1 ahead of the F1 Emilia Romagna Grand Prix. And we'll be back after these messages.
Hi, this is Max Verstappen, and you're listening to Speed City.
You're listening to Speed City F1 on Sirius XM.
All right, when we went to the break, we were talking silly season, different drivers. So this week, Alfa Romeo has chosen to retain Raikkonen and Giovinazzi for 2021, unchanged. And AlphaTauri says they're going to stay with Gasly. Last week, we had Haas say they are not sticking with either driver. So that leaves the picture being, we talked about Hamilton not signed yet. The other seat for Red Bull alongside Verstappen. The other seat for Aston Martin, as it be, and next to Vettel. And the other seat next to Gasly besides the Haas. So I want to talk about this. I was a little surprised that with the seat next to Verstappen still open, that Gasly wasn't in the running for that because he's done so well. Not only won a race, but he qualified fourth yesterday, but he's looked really good this season. Are you guys surprised by that?
Well, I think it's a master's move by AlphaTauri to re-sign him because or make him team leader because he's a hot property. And I mean, if he was still available this week, I would have thought that Gunther Steiner would have whipped him up and said, "Forget that, come join us," because he clearly has a Leclerc vibe about him. He may not be Charles Leclerc, but he's proven on many occasions, and again in qualifying this weekend on a playing field that is like Les said, new and sort of more open, that he's capable of fighting above his weight. It's a short track. It's not a power circuit. It's a technical circuit, and he's fourth on the grid. So he is a hot property, and so AlphaTauri I think is smart signing him early. Alfa Romeo I'm surprised about because I didn't expect Kimi to keep going forever, and I actually thought that Giovinazzi might not get the drive, and they might bring someone like a Mick Schumacher into the fold, but it hasn't happened. So, but that is good for Haas because I honestly think in the pecking order that is Formula One, Haas has to wait until some of the big seats are filled because Perez won't commit, Hülkenberg won't commit until the bigger opportunities go.
Absolutely, and I still think that the pair you just named, Perez and Hülkenberg, are the golden apple that we want on Haas. I think that's the pair.
You think that's the pair, Les? I was thinking it's been Schumacher kind of. Haas has stepped into the front runner position for Schumacher. I thought maybe Perez with his cash and Schumacher with his name and with his young talent, to develop further. I mean, I'm not saying that obviously what you just said is a great pairing, but I just thought maybe they might go that direction. And I'm glad you went there because that's where I wanted to go next is Haas. What do you think, Jonathan?
I think, to be honest, if you gave me Gunter's job, I would choose Perez and his money, and I would choose Eilert or Schumacher either. But obviously the cachet that is Schumacher helps. But I don't think you should invest too much into that. He's good. It's not a case of just having a name. He is very, very good. And both he and Eilert deserve to be in Formula One. But the truth is, having said that, it seems more likely that the man who was sixth in the championship, Nikita Mazepin, from Russia, who also brings money. All I'm saying is I think it's going to be a steady hand like Perez, like Hülkenberg. If they can't get Perez and Perez goes elsewhere, maybe. I think, putting a young guy at Haas is a smart move. Because 2022 is when Haas expect to be competitive again. So they've effectively got a year and a half to bed in somebody like they're doing, develop them.
Yeah.
The one that you mentioned, the Russian guy, I would strike that immediately. Just not anything to do with racing, but just the political world of the U.S.-Russian connection there. I can't see that being a good thing. And to Haas's sponsorships
doesn't come into play.
I was thinking the same thing, Jonathan. I don't know if that really matters, but interesting that you thought of that.
Yeah, I mean it's a point, but I don't think it comes into play in Formula One, which is ostensibly a European based series, and even Haas. All right, they're run by Americans, but I don't think the politics of of what goes on here in America would affect anything that Gene Haas. And I don't think Gene would make the decision. I think Gunter would. So,
yeah, my vote for Perez and Hulk.
Okay. I'd say, can't argue with that. I think I'd be pretty happy with that. And, you know,
the other person we're not talking about is the other Russian, Kvyat. He has
Yeah.
money, and he is, he's not driving badly. I think, we spent some time with both Gasly and Kvyat last year, John, and, I really I warmed up to him.
I did too. In fact, both Gasly and Kvyat, I really thought they were both, they were really good with us being the media, and honestly, I had more fun with them than I did with Magnussen. Magnussen was so quiet; he didn't say much. But yeah, Kvyat, yeah, he's obviously talented too. He's doing well this year as well. I want to step back to Haas for a minute though, because I heard something. I think it was Buxton on his YouTube show talking about. First of all, I was a little surprised because if you step back and go, Magnussen and Grosjean, they're both good drivers, right? We know they're both good and talented drivers, but I feel like the reason they did it was kind of hit the reset button, right? Let's shake things up a little bit. But Buxton brought up the fact that the engineering side of Haas hasn't done that at all. It's basically still the same team. In fact, our man Dave O'Neill was one of the few people that's not still there, and he wondered if, not that they need to shake it up necessarily because of talent, a lack of talent, but the fact that, how in the NFL, sometimes you just say, if it's not going right, you just got to change the head coach, even though maybe he's proven to be a winner in the past, but not winning right now. They just shake it up for the sake of shaking it up and new ideas and new concepts. So I thought that was an interesting take on that.
Yeah, and I think that's a side. I mean, they've obviously, they are sweeping the doors clean without taking both drivers out. That is going to be a new era for Haas, no question. There is a sense of reset, but maybe adding a technical director alongside Gunter. I think Gunter's a good, strong pair of hands, and I think he's been good for Haas. And I think the relationship between Gene and Gunter is good. I can't see them getting rid of Gunter right now at this critical stage when they're starting a very unsettled 2 years. But bringing in a new technical director, perhaps somebody from, a junior from McLaren or Williams or somewhere that has got a lot of talent and that could be nurtured. The next Ross Brawn, the next Adrian Newey, would be really interesting for Haas, because I think that's what they need. They've struggled. They are at the whims of that Ferrari engine, which they can only do so much with. And we're now starting to get the truth behind it, and overheating we heard this week. And, if Ferrari can't sort their own problems, how can Haas sort out Ferrari's problems for them? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Man, it has been a struggle.
The aero package may be what it takes to completely change things up. I don't know why the Mercedes aero package seems to work so well for them. But maybe there is something that could transfer into the Ferrari. Do we just put a Mercedes envelope over the Ferrari package? I don't know.
It's an interesting thought.
Well, let's wrap up the 2021 driver discussion. We talked about all the seats, but so really we haven't talked about who's going to be alongside Gasly and Vettel. What do y'all think? Who do you think? Jonathan, give me your best guess.
The Vettel one is the most interesting because when it was first announced, I was like, well, either Ocon or Perez could teach Vettel a thing or two. And the way he's driving at the moment is just very substandard compared to his teammate. And he has just dropped off the radar. I mean, he's not been in the top 10 in the last 6 or 7 Grand Prix, which you don't expect from a 4-time world champion. But I think his heart is not in it. And I think his move to Aston Martin / Racing Point is a good one. Because he's now invested and he's taken part of the company. So for his legacy and his ambassadorship, you talk about ambassadorships for Hamilton. Well, Vettel's chosen his. He's gone with Aston Martin, and it means he can go sports car racing. He's got a love of the sport and the history of the sport. He understands that. But it's going to be interesting who you put alongside him.
Yep, I
don't know the answer.
Yeah,
but Dave O'Neill's here now, so maybe he does.
Dave has joined us. Hey, Mr. O'Neill, how are you?
Very late. Good morning.
Hey, man, I'm just happy to have you this crazy hour in the morning.
Here's the bit you missed. Dave O'Neill should go back to Haas. Haas need a new technical director, and who are they going to have drive the car besides Schumacher, Mazepin, and Perez? That's where we got to. So knock yourself out.
You go. Well, I think what I was reading last night, the doors closed at Alpha, so that's Perez and his Ferrari connection closed out there. So I think there's probably quite a strong possibility in my book. You'd probably see Perez with Schumacher.
Yes.
Ha.
Well,
what I said, Dave.
We were just talking about another aspect. If you do sweep clean the drivers, is there an aspect on the technical? And this is a question for you because you know these guys through and through. Is there room for a technical up and coming Adrian Newey type figure somewhere either in the organization or at McLaren or Williams or whatever that you might see? And this is a question for you because you are very tight on this, and I don't know if you'd be willing to talk about it, but I don't see them getting rid of Gunter. But is there somebody that they could bring in that might be able to solve the overheating problems, the tire problems, the things that they are struggling with to move them forward technically?
Yes, and I think we've discussed this before, and my view on it is that it's not just one person. What you're after is more of a mechanical force to join all the departments together. And I don't think it's that they've done anything wrong in particular, but where it hasn't joined is the joining of all the components. So I guess communication. I know how good it was when I first started, and again, I'm only guessing, but the long and the short of it, the last 2 years, you've had 2 substandard cars, I guess, for the money that was put on the plate to develop them to begin with. So you're seeing a few people float out of McLaren and head around back to Williams. There's more of a McLaren resurgence at Williams, I'd say. Mm-hmm. So a reasonably unhappy place, I think, even though they're doing not too bad, McLaren. So there's some good figures there. But the difficulty with the Haas project is how much it's split up. So you have the race team in the UK, and then you have the drawing office at Dallara, which is mainly staffed by Haas members, and then there's a subcontract that goes out to Dallara, so they do X amount of work as well. So the technical director, I guess, is where they're missing the join up in there. And then, of course, you have the wind tunnel department as well. And as we all know, that's the bit that we have to join together to make all the overheating problems go away, if you like. So brakes, cooling, you've got the 13 coolers on the car that need sufficient air to...
And that wind tunnel's over in North Carolina, right?
The wind tunnel's in Italy.
Okay.
But the CFD is in North Carolina, in Kannapolis. And again, CFD is one of these things that you have to be running all the time to be able to trust, to put on to the model, and then to say, okay, we're going to put that onto the car. So, I think it's a difficult question. I don't think I could really pinpoint someone because the problem being is that no one else has done the Haas model before in such a segregated way. So I think that's the bit that's hard, is to have someone who can sit at home. Maybe they've had a bit more practice with COVID around the world, but that's what you literally got to do, is sit at home and have Zoom meetings on a weekly basis or daily basis to join these departments together.
Well, that was the big criticism when you guys all started it, is that the European journalists particularly were saying that it can't be done. This is a pipe dream to have a team based in so many different places. Formula One is used to being based around Milton Keynes or around England, and that's and Ferrari are the one subset out of it. Outside of that, having a team in America and Italy and England just won't work. And then, of course, Haas arrived and punched above their weight immediately, and everybody shut up. But it doesn't mean that what you're saying is, I agree with you. I still think it's not an easy thing to do. But I also think that COVID and the technology advances has led us to a position whereby it is possible to do that way.
Yeah, agreed. And of course, the pit stops as well. They're ranked firmly at the bottom there with 1 point in the pit stop table. So you can see this sort of, I guess, there's discipline required.
Yes. Which is interesting because Gene Haas's NASCAR team is second to none when it comes to things like that. I know it's a completely different kettle of fish, but he runs a tight ship, and his NASCAR team, aren't slow. They are, top of the game. And you're right; these are places that need to be tightened up. But therefore, you need a strict leader, and I think Gunter's got enough on his plate running the team, and to go back and sort of put the gloves on and get dirty and get amongst it. I think he needs somebody underneath him that he trusts that can crack the whip.
Yeah, shake it back up a little bit. But hey, guys, let's go ahead and take another break, and we'll continue this discussion. You are listening to Speed City F1 on Sirius XM, and we'll be back after these messages.
I'm Jenny Gow from BBC F1. You are listening to Speed City.
You're listening to Speed City F1 on Sirius XM.
All right, welcome back to the show. If you want to call and join the show, if everybody's awake now, the number's 512-643-LIVE, 512-643-5483. Yeah, give us a call. We have Dave O'Neill, former F1 team manager for Haas and others, is on the line with us. Join the show, and we are talking about the Formula One Emilia Romagna Grand Prix at Imola, and excited about another new circuit. And we are about a half hour away from the start of the race. And Jonathan, I want you to introduce Dave to your theory about Honda. I like this theory, and see what he says.
Dave, what's been rumbling in the background this week is that Gasly, we were talking about potentially going to Red Bull back again. The usual musical chairs that they love to indulge in. But he has now been declared as the team leader to AlphaTauri. And I think, fine, that's good. And then it remains a question mark over Albon. They'll either keep him or they could put a Perez or a Hülkenberg in there, depending on how they feel and which way the wind blows and so on. But Helmut Marko said that they needed Gasly as a team leader, which then begs the question, so therefore he's only 26, 27. So you're going to bring somebody else younger in to be tutored or to be looked after, as is the way of that junior team. And surely, to me, if you wanted to keep the Honda engines and to be a customer, you'd bring in their Honda junior driver, third in the championship in F2, Yuki Tsunoda. And so that was my theory.
Yeah, that's a lot to digest.
So essentially, just to keep Honda, they want to bring Suki in.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots to think about there. Do Red Bull need the money? I have heard that they're interested in taking over the project and doing it themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, you're talking 200-300 million on top. So I don't know, maybe Honda will be quiet in the background and pay the money and help Red Bull develop it, maybe. The other thing which sort of got me thinking while you were describing the Gasly issue was, does that mean that Verstappen has some form of get-out clause? And are they going to stick him? They signed him pretty quickly just to get it done. So he's in the Red Bull frame. But what is happening to Verstappen? Because that boy just wants to win championships, and Hamilton's here for a year or two more. But
he hasn't got the stability of an engine. We don't know. It's a question mark. He's been quiet about it, but the loss of Honda is big to his future, surely.
Huge, yeah. And as we've seen over the decades, you need a works engine to win. So
I mean, that is the story of Lewis Hamilton's success. I don't mean that rudely to him. He may well go down as the GOAT, but that's what Schumacher was so smart at, is choosing the right horse to ride on at the right time.
Yes, and also that's another topic for days of discussion. Is Schumacher certainly built the team around him, so he managed to get all the stones right he stepped on. But I think Verstappen, he in my opinion, he deserves some wins and championships. He's definitely.
All right, let me throw another egg at you. What if Toto Wolff decided to do something else? Would Hamilton be happy to stay with somebody else guiding him rather than Toto Wolff?
And again, open-ended question, I guess, because they've now said that they're going to discuss the contract after the championships are sorted. So they've pushed it further off. So what do? You equal Michael's record, and then you go, okay, well, we just need one more to beat it. So they stay together for a nice hefty 50 million 1-year contract, and then the book has the end written at it.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
2021, you see, because there's just 1 year left, and then everyone's looking to stretch their legs into 2022.
Dave, let's get your take on Imola, because we were talking about the fact that I've been there a bunch of times. But I Hamilton has come out and said it's going to be a boring race, and I think that was because he was in the mode of just being beaten to pole. I know what he's trying to say, because there's very few places to overtake once you get through the first two chicanes. That said, the DRS zone will come in now that they've taken that Mickey Mouse chicane out of the way, and there is a long run from Ravazza to Tamburello. I disagree, and I think strategy will come in. If Red Bull are doing less than 2 second pit stops, I think strategy could play a big role in this race.
Yes, I haven't had a great deal of time to look at the tyre numbers, but Imola itself, I think will generate some overtaking. You've got looking at the map now. I can see at least 3 or 4 places that are overtaking places. You've also got, even if you haven't got an overtake, you've got the capacity to catch up on the braking to get behind someone out of 11 and 12 in particular, I'd say. And then going through 2, 3 and 4, there's another place you can catch up there and stay on the tail for 7 and 8. But yeah, it's I think it's going to be interesting. It's got a load of history there, as we all know. But yeah, it's nice to see a race back there. And I think we're getting pretty close to the Constructors Championship, aren't we?
Yes,
For Mercedes.
Yeah, I
They
think
can wrap it up this weekend.
Yeah, Mercedes.
can, yeah.
In fact, the odds of them not wrapping it up, I mean, they would
Slim.
they would almost have to pull a Hamilton Rosberg crash into each other of a few years ago.
Barcelona.
Yeah, I think that's about the only way it's not going to happen. I saw an article on Sky running the math on it and was like, yeah, it's going to be a pretty simple clinch for them. Yeah, they're gonna clinch that today more than likely. So yeah. Hey, Jonathan, I saw that you had a couple of stories that you put in our show document, and one of those caught my eye. You said something about new circuits spell trouble.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with David. I think it's great to have Imola on. I think so far, and I think Imola will prove to be in the next few hours a huge success. I think it's a majestic place. It's full of history, and it should have a right to be vying for a position in Formula One. The Imola organizers have said they don't want this to be a one-off just because of COVID. They want to be back on the calendar, and they've taken, quite a few steps. There's a heavy influence from Ferrari, obviously, given that it's in the seat of Ferrari's, fiefdom. And all I'm saying is that Portugal was a success. Mugello was a success.
Mm-hmm.
These are all, I mean, certainly in Mugello and Imola, you can see Ferrari saying, thank you very much. And it plays well into a new way of looking at Ferrari, perhaps as being the big influencer by getting them, the money from circuit rental almost. But that doesn't bode well for the Americas, is what I was trying to say, is because you've got Vietnam yet to run. You've got the Dutch Grand Prix yet to run. And we didn't come to the Americas. Canada won't be going anywhere. Roger Penske's rumored to be looking at IMS. That doesn't, all I'm saying is that if I was running COTA, I would be saying, boy, I've got to be competitive. Now, it's been one of the top Grand Prix over the years, and with the numbers that we have here in Austin, and I'm playing devil's advocate because obviously I want it to be here in Austin, Texas, and I think it's still one of the best circuits in the world. But these 3 new circuits plus 2 more coming make it a very crowded schedule, and just as Bernie used to, it makes it a very competitive situation if you're doing the deals with the circuits. And I think that's one thing that Liberty have done really well in COVID, is to bring these new names in and create almost a more competitive playing field for the circuits. I don't know if you'd agree with that, Dave.
Yeah, absolutely. They've done it in a different manner, but kind of achieving the same ethos as what Bernie did.
Yeah.
But we have to get back over this side of the pond, I think, for everyone's sanity, really. And of course, there's nothing that's really stopping us apart from just getting it done, with the deals. So all the rest of the world's on lockdown. It's just making that move for everyone to move over and do it. I guess if they're having it without the crowd, that's fine.
It's certainly an interesting time when next Thursday, Britain, which is why 90% of Formula One is based, will go on a complete lockdown, but not for the working environment, which is important. And so Formula One feels as though it can continue, but it is a tough one. France is locked down. Spain is locked down. Czech Republic is locked down. If it's not been a trying year, it's going to continue to be so. Put it that way.
Hey, Dave, I want to ask you something. We had Bob Varsha on the show last week, and he brought up an interesting idea about, with the success that Jonathan was talking about, all these new circuits this year. He said, maybe we have a wild card circuit every year to kind of shake things up a little bit. What do you think about that idea?
I think that's a fantastic idea. I'm just trying to think where I'd go back to. Maybe Fuji.
Ooh, yeah.
And the other one, which is pretty iconic, it would be Le Mans. Is try and carve out something for Le Mans. For me, that was always, why don't we go there?
Yeah.
Those two. Some of my favourites.
Well, the MotoGP at the Bugatti circuit, and I say the Bugatti circuit because it's the shorter Grand Prix version, has always been successful. And it certainly works for MotoGP. I've been there several times, and you don't worry about using the full course, which you wouldn't, obviously. And it is a typical 3-mile plus circuit with some good corners and good racing, good gravel traps. It can be. Le Mans doesn't need to do anything to put themselves straight on the calendar.
Yeah, good point. All right, guys, so let's take our last break, and when we come back, we're going to go straight into the race right here on SiriusXM. You're listening to Speed City, and we'll be back after these messages.
Hello to everyone, this is Gunther Steiner, this is Speed City.
You're listening to Speed City F1 on SiriusXM.
We are 20 minutes away from the Formula One Emilia Romagna Grand Prix, and we are going to break it down for you right now. This is John Massengill sitting in the studio. We got Les Kaiser, Jonathan Green, and former F1 team manager Dave O'Neill on the line here. And I'm going to just take a quick rundown of the qualifying grid. We had Valtteri Bottas on pole, Lewis Hamilton, Max Verstappen, Pierre Gasly, Daniel Ricciardo, Alexander Albon, Charles Leclerc, Daniel Kvyat, Lando Norris, Carlos Sainz revving out the top 10, Sergio Perez, Esteban Ocon, George Russell, Sebastian Vettel in the Ferrari down in 14th, Lance Stroll, Roman Grosjean, Kevin Magnussen, Kimi Räikkönen, Nicholas Latifi, and Antonio Giovinazzi. But Dave, I want to start with you with Valtteri Bottas on pole. I think we're guaranteed to see a battle for the front. But do you think that maybe Max Verstappen can make it interesting, maybe headed down towards turn one?
Yeah, as ever, I think he's going to make it interesting. But I think Bottas is definitely, he's got the bee under his bonnet. He needs to seal this one just to call the championship or the team's championship from his perspective. He's been there or thereabouts for the last 5 races. I think he'll do it today. But he has to get his start right, and that's the bit he's definitely been struggling at.
Jonathan Green, what about you?
Yeah, I'm particularly impressed with Bottas because, it's the poison chalice to be to be the second man, to be the Massa, to be the Eddie Irvine of a team where the world champion sits and resides and pretty much decides who sits alongside him. And to beat him in qualifying is no mean feat. But I think he's got on top. I think this year particularly, he's got on top. He's found his voice, if you will, as a driver up against the hardest of all, which is to take on the world champion. Rosberg did it finally, and he finally got there, but it took a while. And I think Bottas 15 poles now, and there was nothing. Hamilton shrugged it off, saying it just wasn't a great lap, and fine. But cometh the hour, cometh the man, and Bottas is coming. And as Dave said, he's got over some of he's got to get his starts right. But if you remember pre-season, we were talking about tire management. That's what he couldn't get on top of. And that's what Hamilton was so good at, and where the Mercedes was weak, if anywhere. But I do think now he's getting there, and he's giving Hamilton a run for his money, which Hamilton hasn't got a problem with. But it's great to see. And I think that Bottas has now stepped into being not an equal, but not far off one of the fastest drivers in the world.
I'm going to say Bottas also is on his game in starts now. I don't know if previously he was just letting Hamilton take it or he was lagging that far behind, but he's definitely challenging on the starts more often now.
Yeah, I can't imagine him letting him. If you reach the level of Formula One driver, the competitive juices are not going to let you do that. But well, Les, what about behind those guys? What do you think? You've got Gasly now and looking good in fourth behind Verstappen. You got Gasly, Daniel Ricciardo, Alexander Albon, and Charles Leclerc, 4th through 7th. And I'm always just these days I'm astounded by the closeness of the times. You remember the old 107% rule that we used to have to actually worry about? It's not even close now. I mean,
not even that, yeah.
Yeah, it's not even on the radar. The 107% time is 1:19.416, and Giovinazzi had a 1:16.208, so not even close. So
3 seconds.
3 seconds.
That is how far we've come.
Yeah.
That is something, quite honestly, we've been doing that and seeing those results for a while now like that. I question if they're not going to bring that a little tighter now that all the teams are there for the sake of keeping it tight and having qualified teams get on. I think that would be one more control element that they'd consider when a new team comes. If we knock that down by 2%, we'd probably be closer to what we see as the field right now, and not getting somebody that would bring up the caboose of the field.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, Les, do you think that Gasly behind those guys, think he can maintain that 4th position and finish the race like that?
I do. I think the start's really going to be interesting because in his rearview mirror is Albon directly behind him.
Mm-hmm.
I can never look past or not consider that rivalry there. The first thing he's got to do is shake Albon and not have him, and he can really focus on it, is my thought. I don't think they're going to swap seats back by any means, but there's still that echo chamber of Gasly and Albon swapping seats last year because of their performance. Gasly has to stay out front no matter.
Hey, so Dave O'Neill, I want to ask you about Red Bull and AlphaTauri. You think of obviously AlphaTauri being the junior team, but they've been pretty competitive. Other than Max, of course. I mean, what are the budget differences, or what do you expect to see? I mean, is this AlphaTauri outperforming what you'd expect normally?
Absolutely. I mean, the budget difference is huge between the two. I'd like to say 150 to 200 million difference between the two. They're not as buddy as we all think they are because they've got the same clothes on. There's definitely a lot of them and us for sure in my experience. But I think he's done a fantastic job, Gasly. He's definitely punching above his weight there. And if you look where, as you say, Albon's 2 steps back, and then look where Kvyat is, he's 4, he's in 8th. Again, Gasly's outperformed again. So I think I think he's got a top 5 finish under his belt there. The bit that I was interested in looking at is the difference between the two teammates of Williams, and why we're wondering whether George is going to have a drive next year. Again, he's done a fantastic job. He's put the car into P13 and his teammate is down in 19th. We can't keep sort of scoping over that.
Yeah.
I really do rate George. He puts it there every single time, and look what he did to someone like Kubica. You know, they didn't give Kubica the drive just because they felt sorry for him. They gave him the drive because they thought he could do the business, and Russell out-qualified him every race. The other one, which is interesting, is what are the Racing Points doing all the way back there? What's happened?
Yeah, good point.
What went on?
Well, there was discussion on the checkered flag again about Stroll's comeback from COVID has been pretty much a disaster. Les mentioned they've had 7 COVID cases in all, and whether you like it or not, and Dave, you can talk to this. It's going to affect your team when that many people are going down, especially when one of your drivers, in fact, not both, at one point have been suffering of this COVID, and they're saying that perhaps Stroll isn't 100%. He said he couldn't train for 2 weeks, and then Otmar says, "Oh, he's fine," and that it doesn't belie the results.
And he could just be out of rhythm, He may not. He could be well, but you get out of your rhythm and out of your routines.
Yep.
Yeah, totally agree. There's for sure 2 weeks laid up with not being able to train or eat or drink what you should be doing.
Sure.
Definitely a disadvantage for sure. I've seen what Otmar eats on the plane, and he'd definitely struggle.
That's funny. So behind Gasly, and we talked about Albon, we haven't talked about Daniel Ricciardo, who sits in 5th in qualifying, but in the middle all goes. Daniel Ricciardo has looked great lately, and the Renault team, they're looking good. What do you guys think about where Daniel sits?
Could be an opportunity for him. He's been bursting to do something special. I said that I just feel that this could be a really interesting race because it's such a narrow track. It only needs one mistake. And if you go off at turn 4, it's going to be a safety car. So at that point, then it begs the question, well, do we bring into strategy? And I just think when I think of Ricciardo, I think he might be looking for that opportunity to do something special today. If things don't go, if we don't get into a freight train with no incidents, but I think there's going to be some incidents and therefore some safety.
Yeah. All right. So if we just continue down, I'm thinking about, I want to get to the Haas team here in a minute, but Lando Norris, he had a little bit of a controversial week with some of his comments. I didn't think that was really that big a deal. Lando Norris was his comments were last week talking about Hamilton, beating Schumacher's record, and he was saying, well, of course he is. He downplayed the accomplishment by saying he's in the best car, he's in the fastest car, of course he's going to win. And then he came out and apologized. I don't know. I kind of wish he didn't. I want to, it's okay to say, it's okay to have an opinion like that, but so
it's true.
Yeah. I mean, right. I mean, Hamilton should be fastest. Or Bottas because he is. I mean,
car. We talk about Brady and and Belichick, but if you get to play on that team, yeah, you're going to get more Super Bowls because whatever. If you get to play with Michael Jordan, then it's Scottie Pippen. It's a tough one.
Yeah. What about those guys today, Jonathan? Norris and Carlos Sainz sitting 9th and 10th. What do you expect out of them?
Again, I think McLaren have. Dave was saying it earlier. McLaren have kind of got their doo-doo together. They're looking good, and I think they too will be looking for the strategy game to move ahead. And I think those two work so well together and are both fast that you can mold them during a race to take a. I mean, Portugal I thought was really interesting the way both of them. At one point both of them led it, I think. So, yeah, I think McLaren are also in a position to surprise. I think the 3 teams I'm looking at, except for the obvious, which is Mercedes, are going to be what Renault can do, what McLaren can do strategy-wise, and more importantly, I'm looking at a footnote for what Red Bull can do. And what I mean by that is I'm keeping an eye on Albon. He spun in qualifying. He's under pressure to keep his seat. And I think Verstappen is due a win, and this is probably as good or any chances he's got.
Yeah, Albon just kind of seems to be crumbling under the pressure, doesn't he, a little bit?
Well, it's a horrible cauldron, Red Bull. They're not particularly, they're not particularly good on their humans. They're a fantastic product, and they proved that time and time again. They've made a lot of money, but they're pretty ruthless with their drivers, and there's no real room for. We've met Albon. He's such a nice guy. He wouldn't say boo to a goose. He's so nice. He's the sort of guy that you'd happily have dinner with all night long and talk racing with. But I wouldn't want to throw him into the cauldron of Red Bull.
Yeah, but that's
there's no gooses in racing.
Yeah.
But that's their philosophy, man. And a lot of competitive sports teams, that's, you jump in and give it all you got or you're out, and some coaches have that style, and that's just Red Bull's style is that, you do it or you're out. And
well, Dave mentioned this earlier about Schumacher building a team around him. I think Verstappen's almost in that position. The way they signed him up so early and have kept the faith, and he has paid it back in spades by outperforming when the time is right. That they're building a team around him, and whoever's second to Verstappen is almost immaterial. It's a bit like Bottas. It was kind of like. Yeah, we'll just whoever partners Rosberg. Without being funny, Rosberg won his title, but he was always the second fiddle to Hamilton, and I think that's the truth with Verstappen. Whoever gets that drive, unless they do something like bring up Perez or Hülkenberg, but I can't see that happening.
All right, I'm continuing down. I'm looking at Sebastian Vettel down in 14th in the Ferrari. Dave, I want to ask you this: Ferrari has been insisting that the hardware is the same for Leclerc and Sebastian Vettel.
It's the human wear.
Yeah, do you think the car is exactly the same as Sebastian Vettel? He just doesn't care anymore? What's going on?
The cars, in the teams I've worked in are never exactly the same. So there's always a flick up or, a tyre pressure that's different or something like that. So the cars aren't the same. But maybe minuscule amounts of difference. I just think that he's not in the zone. He's definitely checked out. And then of course I'm looking at the constructors here, and I think just to change the subject slightly, but keep within Ferrari. I think AlphaTauri can actually, if they have a good weekend this weekend, can level with Ferrari. And maybe stick them down in 7th after the following weekend. But the real fight this weekend is Racing Point, McLaren and Renault. They're all within 6 points of each other. So Racing Point in the worst position, coming from behind, and the guys that have to do the business this weekend to get into 3rd place are McLaren. So they need two cars on the points as high up as possible. And I think that's what they'll be fighting for when we look at the strategies on that side.
Yeah.
So.
Good point. Yep.
Yeah, I love that midfield right now. Like you said, Racing Point, Mercedes 435, about to wrap it up. Red Bull at 226, then Racing Point at 126, McLaren at 124, Renault at 120, and then Ferrari down at 93, AlphaTauri 77. So that's just like the times we were talking about earlier. I love that clump right there. It's really anybody's position to win. So, all right, Jonathan, I want to start with you a little bit. So we've talked a little bit about what to expect about some specific things, but what about some things we haven't talked about? What about some wild cards? Anything you can think of today that might surprise us about any team at Imola?
I think Gasly's going to have another good run. I think he's I think he's in a good space right now. I think he's driving out of his skin. He's proved it. He's won a Grand Prix. There's a lot of unfilled seats out there. Everybody's vying for position, which is what Formula One's all about. So if there's anybody going to create a surprise and get on the podium at least, it could be Gasly. But if you want do you want my prediction yet or not?
Oh, sure. Why not?
My prediction is Verstappen with good strategy and brilliant pit stops.
Wow. Okay. I will take that. Dave, what about your prediction for today?
I'm going to go with Bottas.
Yeah.
Bottas, Verstappen, Gasly.
Ooh,
Yeah.
I like that. I like that.
What has happened to Hamilton then? Has he gone home?
Well, I think they have a bit of a dust up at the first corner. So
Yep, fair enough.
and his horns come out.
Sure.
What about you, Les?
Excellent. I'm going to go with Bottas, Max, and I want to throw in Ricardo.
I knew you were going to say Ricardo.
It's time to get Ricardo back on the podium. I want to see that. But the asterisk I'm going to throw out is watch Sergio Perez. He's driving for a seat somewhere.
Good point.
Good point. Yeah.
I love these predictions. These are great. I love to see some. All right, I'm going to go with Hamilton for the win.
Yeah.
I'm going to go against all that and go with Hamilton for the win because he's going to pass Bottas and see what happens. But all right, guys. Well, we're out of time, and of course, don't forget we will be back after the race and for a 1-hour post show. And write the phone number down because we want to hear from you after the race. It's 512-643-LIVE, 512-643-5483. We've had calls from all over the United States this year. Let's get some calls, some states that we haven't heard from, and we will talk to you after the race.